right, we are recording, we are live, and I'm excited to be back. And we're here with Alex, of course, who has the ability to tie while talking. I don't have that ability. I'm pretty impressed with that. So,
Good thing or a bad
um,
thing?
yeah, exactly. So last time we were chatting, it was April. Now we're into early June, and the bass fishing season, I don't want to say has come and gone, but probably the
hmm
peak of it has come. Let's start with actually the first thing I want to ask is when when is going to be the kind of end date for fishing bass in the Northwest? Are they going to start dropping down to the Miramichi pretty quickly? Can you talk a bit about that? Because I know people would want to know about that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's I'd like to first state this is just one humble guide's opinion.
Yeah.
This is a very new fishery. Well, it's a developing fishery. I shouldn't say it's a very new one because it's been around
Hmm.
for over a decade now. I don't know when it opened. We'd have to look that up. I don't want to get called out for dates being wrong, but it's not a new fishery, but it's an ever so developing fishery, I would say.
Yeah.
So for example, this year, we saw the bass spawn a lot later.
Yeah.
Um, the conditions were a lot different. Last year we had what we call like a low water year, didn't have very
Yeah.
much rain at all. Things kind of came in, they did their thing, and then they left. This year is different in the sense that they've kind of come around and they started to spawn for a bit. Then they got shut down kind of right around the same time as the tournament. We got a cold front that came in. And then after that cold front, they got really going for a really good spawn. DFO shut down the river, and now we're into kind of what I would call like a post spawn
Hmm.
striper season.
Yeah.
June to me is always good fishing. But what happens is I just basically kind of start targeting a lot of the salmon pools that are lower
Okay.
within the system. Anything that's below head of tide or at the head of tide can be really great bass fishing still.
Okay.
They seem to drop out of the Northwest a lot
Hmm.
quicker. But then, people start catching them pretty actively over in Corryville. They're already
Yeah.
catching them down along the coast. So they're catching them in Shediac, they're catching them in Capillet, they're catching them in Cape Lumiere, they're catching them up in Bathurst. So, a big group of these bass have predominantly done their spawn and have left, but there's still a lot that haven't spawned out. A bunch of females or early females might have spawned out, but some of the older females would still have eggs.
Okay.
And just with the way the weather's been, very, very possible there's quite a few fish in the system still. I know we had some sports out this week, and they are still seeing fish around.
Yeah.
The post spawn bite can definitely be a lot more tricky, I find.
Yeah.
Like you fished with me last year in the post
Yeah.
spawn. If you're pretty like on it, you know what I mean? If you stay on it and you cast a lot in the day and you're stripping line and you're changing flies, you can still produce 20 fish days.
Yeah.
Like I think you were close to 20 fish or so when you
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
yeah. And that's a in the post spawn, that's a great day of fishing if you ask me. Like I've fished
Right.
it enough and I've had enough clients. Like if you can get 20 fish in a day in that post spawn, it's pretty good.
Agreed.
Um, Now what I'm finding with this hotter weather that we're getting, like even me, I'm hiding in the basement because
Yeah.
it's just too hot upstairs in my office there. So I'm down here. The early morning bite gets really good, and the late evening bite gets really
Yeah.
good. They're predatory fish, and that's when their prey is going to come out. That's when they're going to start to feed more. You can take advantage of that 2 hour nighttime fishing. So June after that big spawn, I fish into the dark, for at least an hour or so, any legal time that I can, and I still produce lots of big fish, lots of nice fish. Yeah, June can be really fun for fly fishing for the bass. And with this fishery developing, I guess I would say is there's an entire coastline that's full of bass and an entire saltwater fishery to learn from.
Hmm.
Um, so that's kind of cool. And that's kind of where I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to spend more time on the flats and out on the coastline. I've already
Okay.
rigged myself up with like three new saltwater reels and rods. So
Cool.
I'm gonna chase the fish this year, just being salmon what it was last year on the Miramichi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. I'm still gonna fish for salmon, but I'm gonna spend a lot more time chasing after bass in June, July, August, September, and October.
Okay, cool. Okay, and that was a really great rundown because I want people that are listening to the episode that maybe haven't done a lot of bass fishing to kind of know where to go because there's a lot of river to fish for those bass, and if you
Yep.
don't know their the ins and outs of where they go and when, it can be hard to get onto them. And to shift over to some of my own experiences, like that cold front, I fished for them. I went with a couple buddies during the cold front. It was the day before the tournament started, and
Yeah, that was fun.
we didn't see a single fish.
Oh, really? That was
No,
interesting. That was an interesting cold front. It dropped like
it was crazy.
15, it was 15 degrees Celsius that it
Yeah,
dropped. So
yeah.
it dropped by 15 degrees in like 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, and we went, and we explored some river. I mean, not only, but we didn't see a fish. We didn't see anybody hook up with a fish. Nobody on boats was catching. Nobody on
Really?
shore was catching. It was like they were completely shut down. Now, of course,
How do I insert photos?
yeah, exactly.
What was the
Well,
date you were fishing? Let me look at my phone here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know offhand. Now, no. Here's the thing. I'm sure people did get a couple fish that day, but it's where were the fish, and they weren't where we were. We were fishing up, like up pretty high up the northwest,
Yep.
and they had definitely dropped down at that point because we weren't seeing any activity on top of the water, and again, no one was hooking up. So. I think it was a good lesson too in terms of okay, when it's that slow,
Oh,
you kind of
absolutely.
know that the fish aren't even there. It was
Well,
the
I'd have to
yeah, go ahead.
stop you on that one.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're still there.
Oh,
So
okay, they're
I
just
guided those same
yeah.
dates that you, I was just checking my phone, those
Okay,
same
yeah.
dates
Yeah.
you were on the water.
Yeah.
The bass, like, I don't know, this year I've experienced some different stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen them take floating lines and take top lines in water that was 42 degrees and 38.
Okay. Okay.
Um, don't know why. So the cold water thing kind of went out of the window. I was fishing with clients and like we hooked 70 fish in 2 hours of fishing
Yeah.
in that first big cold front that came through. There was one before the bass
Yeah.
tournament. There's another
Yeah.
cold front. So same thing. We got into a little warm up where it was like 30 degrees for almost 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Do you remember that before the bass tournament? It would have been before the 20th. It would have been like the second week of May. We got
Yeah.
into a
Okay.
warm up. The
Mm-hmm.
bass primed right up and they went nuts and they started to kind of
Yes.
like they weren't fully spawning. There was no milt in the water. There was no eggs, but you seen a
Yeah.
lot of what we called like dry humping is what we call it.
Right. Okay.
Pre-spawning, lazy spawning, dry humping, but
Yeah.
there's no eggs, no milt in the water, and that was
Mm-hmm.
like the second week of May. And that cold front that came through that you're talking about shut the fish down and turned the
Yeah.
bite off,
Yeah.
but the fish were still there.
Right, right, right.
Some fish dropped out, but like I would say the majority of the fish in the areas that you fished still stayed there. They get what I call lockjaw. And
Gotcha.
this year I was able to stand on top of fish a lot more, like just I did a lot more drift fishing with the boat. So I'd go
Okay.
up as high as I could and then float down 2 or 3 kilometers of
Right,
river and do a lot
right.
of casting and stop spooking fish.
Yeah.
And I was able to see a lot of areas where the fish were. And what I noticed these freaking bass are doing, like it's literal lockjaw. Like we
Hmm.
still had good days of like 40 and 50 days on the 40 and
Yeah.
50 days, 50 fish days on those couple of days before the tournament.
Yeah.
And they get lockjaw to the point where like when I'm taking the hook out of their mouths, like I'm like prying their mouth open and
Oh,
taking the hook
interesting.
out. And like even the other guides are saying like the fish are closing their mouths on their thumb. And like you can feel it. They've got a lockjaw. Their mouths are
Yeah.
literally just like stiff. And from watching them as they warm up, they'll do this weird thing where like sometimes they take really aggressively, they get underneath of the fly, they hit it, and you see this big tail flap.
Yeah.
Other times, they get behind the fly and they just open their mouths and suck it in.
Right.
When they have this lockjaw, they kind of come up behind it real lazy and they open their mouths and kind of like half suck it in and they might tap on it a bit.
Hmm.
And then if they don't get it, they just leave it alone. They just drop right
Hmm.
back down to the bottom.
Hmm.
They sit on the bottom, hunk around, and I've seen them so many times this year just open their mouths and mouth it and then just do this. They're just like lockjaw, not aggressive. That cold front shuts them down.
Yeah.
They're still there though, and you can still find like the odd one to take, but it's
Yeah.
incredible to see like everybody says these are bass, these are predatory fish, they'll eat anything.
Yeah.
I get there's lots of times when they're full around, they're playing with it. They're not eating it. They're not
Well,
taking it, but they're still there.
funny. Well, and I mean, I don't know sort of what to do with the information of they're still there, but yet they won't take. It's almost like it's good to know, but I'm still not catching them.
Yeah,
Um,
it's tricky. Like it's perspective is everything. So like if you can get
yeah.
a higher vantage point and at least look down into the pool
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see like if you're a fly fisher, having polarized glasses is becoming
Yeah.
pretty important. And
Yeah.
if you're fishing in a river and you don't like our jet boats at the lodge, we don't have any electronics. So
Yeah.
I would say that at this point I'm a sight fishing guide on the days that I can
Yeah.
see the water.
For sure.
When the water comes up high, it's so hard to see the bottom of the river. It's just we have
Yeah.
dark water. So
Yeah.
I mean, you got to fish like your heavy sink lines, like your T10s. I
Yeah.
had Klein in with T14, and you'll feel the fly swinging. You're either hooking bottom or you're hooking fish. And then
Yeah.
some days, like it's like if you find a spot where you can hook three or four on those days, that's pretty good for that spot. Then
Yeah.
what I would do is if I get a spot where I get like three or four fish, I would just move to a new spot.
Right.
Get two or three there. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I got two or three. There's, a couple that are active. Go down, find a new pot of fish, and it's all sight fishing really.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like if you could get one or two in a spot, yeah, find another spot. I bet you'd get one or two, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
If you're fishing from shore, it's really tricky. You're
Exactly. You're so
you're very
limited.
limited, yeah, with
Yeah.
a fly rod especially, and then you limit
Mm-hmm.
yourself if you're using a single hander. It's I've done it. I've done it. I'm not losing weight as fast as I wanted to because I'm primarily fishing out of a boat these days. But
Yeah. Yeah.
there's some big advantages to fishing out of a boat,
Oh
especially with a
God.
fly
Yeah.
rod. But I mean, the June is typically lower water, so most of
Right.
June I'm usually not running a boat. I'm usually
Right.
waiting in the salmon pools, like I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like Coreyville in June is awesome, man. You go there
Yeah.
early morning as the sun comes up, or right before it comes up, or go there like 8 o'clock when the sun's just going down below the hill.
Mm-hmm.
You can have bass fishing every cast right until like the first, second week of July.
Nice. Okay, and that's good to know. And just before I forget too, so I had that day where it was slow, right? And like my
Hmm.
fly was hitting the bottom all the time, and they just weren't taking or weren't in that section during the time I was there or whatever. Now, I went back the day they shut the river down for spawning.
Oh man, that was fun.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. I got about 120 to 150 fish.
Yep.
It was every first or second cast. If they spit my fly, there was another bass ready to take my fly. It
Not
was
fun.
absolute insanity, man. Now it was kind of funny. So I showed up at the river and kind of made friends with a dude that
With a
fishes
dude.
around there a lot. Yeah.
It's
Shout
not
out
as
to
creepy as it sounds, folks.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
as
yeah.
creepy as it sounds.
No, cool guy, really cool guy, a local guy named Darius, and he had some knowledge and stuff. And then we were fishing on the bank, and he's like, "Yeah, my buddy's coming with his kayak, and he's gonna shuttle me over to this island." And I
I
was like, "Oh,
knew where
that
you
sounds
guys were. I whipped by you like two or three times. I
that's
know that was where
hilarious.
you guys there. I was
That's
wondering.
hilarious. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. And like we were catching consistently before we got shuttled over, but they were mostly schoolies. And
Yep.
then his buddy showed up. We got shuttled over to that island. And all of a sudden we were catching much, much bigger fish. And it was an absolute blast. It was such a great day. And me, Darius, I think his buddy's name was Jeff, and then another guy, I think his name was Gord. Like it's such a cool camaraderie when you just meet people down at the river and it's like when you're a kid and you can just be friends with people right away. It's like when you have that fishing in common, there's just this instant sort of kinship. And we just had the best day. It was just easy fishing like I said, like I stopped around 6:30. I'd already limited out with my four keeper size fish, and my right arm was dead. I actually, I like I on my last big fish, I had a wicked Charlie horse while I was trying to get the fish in. And it was just like, I know the fishing's even going to be better in the next 2 hours. It doesn't matter. My arm's dead, and I'm already limited out.
I concede.
I concede, yeah, but at the same time, it's like, but hey, I concede, but I've got my four keeper, I've got a sink full of fish, and like I really don't like to keep trout very much at all. So to get into this fishery where I can keep that many bass and
Mhm.
not feel guilty about it, it's so nice for me, man. It was, and so that was just the best day of fishing I've probably ever had. Probably the amount of pounds worth of fish I caught in that afternoon, like it's going to be hard to ever rival that unless I go striped bass fishing again, next year and get into more. But
Yep.
man, when those fish are on, there is no other species I'd rather be targeting. They're just so fun.
They are. It is. It's definitely a lot of fun there. I have no qualms with that.
Yeah, and it's cool. Back to Quarryville a bit. I went back there after the spawn, like a couple days later, and the fish weren't as on as they were, a couple days ago. It's really interesting how the ebbs and the flows are of
Mhm.
that. And then so got into a couple fish, left my spot on the Northwest early, and went to Quarryville. And I was seeing a lot of people hooking up in Quarryville. A lot of them were smaller fish and were schoolies. And but I was talking to some gentlemen that were fishing there, and basically they were saying that the striped bass had just come into Quarryville, and this was like a week or so after they had come into the Northwest. So it's interesting how on the Southwest they're kind of on a little bit of a different schedule, and that's interesting what you said about them being fishable into July. The timing of those two different branches of the river, that's really important to kind of understand to be able to continue to get into fish later on into the season. So that was kind of cool to learn about. And I had when I was fishing Quarryville and I was having a bit of a harder time, but what I realized too was that a lot of the guys fishing Quarryville were fishing on floating lines.
Yep.
When I was fishing the sink tip on the Northwest and just slaying them, I actually wasn't doing as good with the sink tip on in Quarryville. People on the floating line were doing a lot better. So that's interesting to note as the season sort of progresses and as you're switching, what's working on the Northwest in terms of setup might not be ideal on the Southwest. And then, like I said, I was kind of having a harder time on at Quarryville. And then, as I was actually getting close to leaving, and somebody who was fishing the tidal section of the river there, past the bridge, said, "Oh," as he was leaving, he said, "Man, go and fish this spot. I'm seeing some spawning activity there." And so I went to where he had indicated, and like they were spawning in the middle of the river, far outside of where I could actually cast to.
Mhm.
But all I did was I cast as close as I possibly could to the spawning activity, and I was getting fish after fish.
Oh yeah,
So
there's if there's fish spawning over there, there's fish milling around on the sides for sure.
Yeah, so that's a really cool thing. That was a really cool lesson of like, okay, if you can see that activity, even if you can't, you can't cast to it, even if it's half of the length away from where you can cast as close as you possibly can towards that activity, and you're gonna pick up a couple that are milling around, like you said. So that was
Yep.
super cool.
Oh, it's fun.
So, but and another thing too, again, when we had last talked, it was April and we were getting ready for the spring salmon season. So
Yes.
I don't want to get too far away from talking about that because there's some fun stuff to talk about. First of all,
Yep.
how was your spring salmon fishing?
It was good. I got into a good amount of fish, had
Hmm.
some awesome clients, but short-lived. It was 2
Hmm.
weeks and then wham
Yep.
bam, it seemed to be over. And on May 4th, we were catching bass.
Yeah, yeah, it is a pretty quick season, and it's the same with where I fish, which I don't know if you would call it the sort of upper section of the Southwest, but in the kind of Boys Town area, by
Yep.
end of April, the vast majority of those salmon have dropped down quite low,
Yep.
and
Exactly.
then they're in the lower river at that point. But I targeted them in the upper river, and I really didn't spend all that much time uh, on the water, but it was a cool evolution because like I'm new to this community, so I'm kind of learning spots.
Hmm.
So I kind of found this new spot and I would go there to kind of check the water. And, it's a very short drive from my house. So I could look, see what the water was looking like. And I kept running into locals that were kind of giving me some tidbits of information in terms of where the sort of best spot in that area was to target them. And so, it took me a little bit to learn that. Then once I learned that, I kept going to the spot and I'd be seeing people fishing. And so it was like, okay, this is kind of the spot, right? And so I was able to narrow my sort of focus down even more and met some really cool guys on the river, some friends of friends that, I'm going to fish with some more, and had a really cool experience where uh, I went down to the water this one day, and a guy that I had met, mutual friend, was there, and he happened to have a salmon net, which I didn't. Thank God. And so we went down and we were fishing all day, weren't really seeing fish. I actually rolled a fish with a bomber while I was talking to him about my gear. It was too funny. And so then he kind of said, I kind of see this spot. It's kind of like in a sketchier section of the river, but I think I want to wait over there and check it out." And at that point, I was getting ready to leave. I'd been at it for a while. And but I kind of, I was having fun just chatting with him and stuff. So he went in that section, and within like two or three casts, he had a salmon on. And so I grabbed the net and I started running to him. And this was kind of like I said, it was a sketchier, sort of flooded out section of the river. And so, I was a little bit tentative about going there. And he was like, he had the fish on, and he was trying to turn around and sort of give me tips on like where to walk so that I could get to him and not drown. And so, but I very quickly got to him with the net. We netted that fish, and then he said, "All right, your turn." And so I went in there, hooked a grouse really quick, but lost it. So then I went back into that pool, and like I was a little bit discouraged having lost the grills. But it turned out to be the best thing that I could have done, because after five more casts, when normally I probably, if I would have hooked the grills or landed it, I probably would have switched back with him. Because I lost it, I kind of stayed in that pool. And within like five casts, I had, a nice size adult salmon, right? Much better than a grills. And I had it nicely hooked and
Got the little grill set out of the way so the salmon
got
would take
the
the
got
fly.
the got the grill set of the way. It was all intentional. I just wanted to get that grill set of there, and so hooked and played that bass. Had a great fight, and then my buddy had the net at that point. He was right there to net it for me, and so we both got to hook and net our own and each other's first fish of the year. For him, it was his first spring salmon. So
Nice.
it was such a cool experience. Like just such a quintessential fly fishing, the camaraderie, the fish, everything. It was a beautiful, beautiful day.
The way it should be when on the river.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really fun. And then another thing too I wanted to bring up was it was also like my sort of evolution of getting into the right spot and the right technique. Part of that was leader length and playing with my leader length. So what I was finding was I was using a really, really short leader, as we had talked about last episode, but I was
Hmm.
constantly hooking bottom, and I
Yep.
was getting a bit frustrated. And I have a pretty aggressive sink tip line. So then I switched to, or rather, I added an extra couple feet of leader,
Hmm.
and that made a big difference for keeping my fly in the right area.
Yep.
So it was a good learning lesson, and something I want to, pass on to people is that if you're fishing, whether it's for spring salmon or even for bass, when you're constantly hitting bottom and getting losing flies and getting frustrated with that, you want to be near bottom. But if you're hooking bottom that much, add an extra, start with, if you're going 2 feet, maybe go up to 3 feet. And if you're still hooking bottom, maybe go to 4 feet. And so playing with those leader lengths, I was really able to get my fly in the right zone without having to adjust my fly line or do anything too extreme. I could use the same flies I wanted to use the same line I wanted to use, but then when I played with that leader length, it made all the difference for not getting my fly constantly hooked on bottom.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was solid advice.
yeah. So that was it was a good firsthand learning experience about all that. So I had a really great spring salmon fishing season, and the numbers. It was a really the opening day was a really unique opening day as well because the water was really low.
Yeah, it was.
We hadn't got the spring fresh. Is it freshet or am I saying that right? I never knew exactly how to.
The spring freshet would be like the
Yeah,
old term for when the ice went out.
right, right. So that like
The
there
big run
the
of water, the big run of
yeah,
ice, they call it the spring freshet. So we had a spring freshet, yes, but it wasn't a
yeah,
very big one. The ice went
right.
out, the
Hmm.
water was there a little bit, but we never had the rains with it.
Yeah, so the opening day was super unique where the water was really clear, it
Hmm.
was really low, and so that was a cool experience. And then pretty much I think after the first day, then the rain started and the snow started to melt and the river really came up nicely. And the river has been at a really nice level
That's been
like
awesome.
all season. We've got consistent rain. It's the complete polar opposite of last season, where I could wade really far into the river May 15th. Like it was nuts how early I was able to wade around the river. Which was cool for getting into, certain unique spots, but by June last year, the river was like crazy low.
Yep.
Which obviously is not ideal. So, that was an interesting thing to note. The river depth rather, and yeah, on the southwest, which is where I fish for salmon, the numbers were really good. People were getting a lot of fish. Like, people were having really, really good days, lots of hookups everywhere around the river. So, even though last year the salmon returns were really low at the end of the season, the amount of kelp people were catching suggests that those fish are probably coming in much later and aren't getting counted in those numbers.
Hard to say, really.
I
It's
mean, yeah.
those Celts, I don't know. They don't have an accurate way of counting the fish for sure, but
Hmm.
trying to determine the indication of the actual general population just based off the spring Celt hookup, there's a lot of science
Mm.
to that one.
Yeah.
It's not the accurate way to judge the population. If anything, it's kind of like it's an indication, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's
Yeah.
an indication of the strength of the residential population. Like those are the
Okay.
estuary fish, so ones that might not be necessarily sea run ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like from what I hear, like you and I are experiencing decent spring salmon fishing, where we
Yeah.
can get, 5 or 6 fish in a day, and that's awesome. But
Yeah.
what the fishery used to be 20 years ago, they were
Right.
catching 50 in a day, right? Like
For
now
sure.
our experience, I guess, that I've heard
Yeah.
enough is
Hmm.
that like our good fishing in the springtime now is comparable to like a good day of fishing in the fall when the
Uh,
water be low and there's not a
right.
lot of fish around. So it's good, yes, but the springtime when there's that many fish around, there, you know what I mean, you should be able to get your limit every time you go out. You shouldn't have any fishless days, even if it's water
Right.
low, so on and so
Right.
forth. So that one's tricky. We need a biologist in here to have that
Yes.
good that the Celts versus the sea runs and how those populations work because there's different populations of the salmon. Some are here forever, some go out, some stay for a year or two. It's really cool. I mean, bass
Yeah.
populations have the same thing, right? There'll
Yeah.
be residential bass, there'll be estuary bass, and then there'll be sea runs or ones that aren't even really from the Miramichi but come here to spawn.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, kind of
Yeah,
cool.
that makes sense. And I think the other thing about the kelp is that there's probably people catching the same kelp
Oh
like
yeah,
quite a few
100%.
times
Yep,
during the season. So there's a lot of rehookups.
exactly.
I would say
And
for
if you're
sure.
fishing like in the estuary areas, that scenario is very, very possible because,
Right,
those fish, some of those salmon are just going to go down to the estuary to fatten up and then they're going to head right back up river. They've
right.
recorded that on tags enough times that we
Oh,
know
cool.
not all of these kelts are going to go out to the sea. They might hang around for 3 or 4 years before they decide to go back out to the sea again. They might never go
Right.
back out to the sea. It's a cool
That's
thing about the
interesting.
Atlantic salmons. Yeah, like I think
Yeah.
the longest recorded spawning Atlantic salmon is between 7 and 11 years or something like that. I want to say it's 11 years, but
Wow.
seven is a number without pulling a fact. Seven
Yeah.
between 7 and 11, but I think it
Yeah.
is like 11 years recorded. The same salmon is
Hmm.
spawned in the river, which is very cool, right?
That's amazing. Yeah. Compared to
Yeah,
Pacific salmon.
yeah. Compared to your cohos, your kings, and some of your other salmon out west, yeah, it's very very different fish.
Yeah, that's really cool, and that it would be cool to get a biologist that specializes in salmon to talk more about that.
I got some
So,
names. I got some
oh,
names for
good,
sure.
good, cool, awesome. So yeah, so spring salmon, I had a blast. I got a nice fish. I really didn't spend that much time fishing them, and
Hmm.
I spent a couple days fishing them kind of where I was, in not ideal spot. So now, coming into next season, I know a really good run where the spring salmon like to hang out. You know what I mean? I've got the
Hmm.
technique down, so I think I'll probably see a lot more fish in the net next year. But I had a
Cool.
blast, and like I said, it was just such a cool experience going down, and there was kind of a few guys that would consistently go down to the same spot, and you're making friends and having fun and just hanging out on the river. It's beautiful.
Becoming part of
And
the local regime.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yep. And then so now that brings me into trout fishing because obviously, there's some overlap and the month of May is, the
Is
trout
my fly.
that's my favorite month for trout fishing, I'm realizing. And I had consistently great trout fishing. This has been my best spring for trout by far. So and I'll as we're talking, I'll edit together some pictures of some trout that I was catching.
Nice.
And like I was finding, early May, I was catching them with the sink tip with pretty much the same flies I'd be using for the spring salmon and getting some nice fish that way. Then obviously as the season went on, probably about mid-May, I was switching to floating line and fishing on top of the water. Another piece of local knowledge that I got was that, and I mean, I kind of already knew this, but it was really reinforced. Everybody that I talked to that was talking about trout fishing, the sea run specifically, was putting a lot of emphasis on bombers. And I'd used bombers before. I like bombers. I prefer something like a white wolf. There's a lot of other flies that I kind of prefer to use, just mostly because of the ease of casting them. But I was put on to the bombers and told that the sea run trout really respond well to them. And I ended up predominantly using bombers for the sea trout, and that was definitely part of my success. They really
Nice.
like bombers, and specifically like a green or orange body with green or orange hackle, and then like the white throat and tail
Hmm.
was just absolutely slaying the sea run trout.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's my experience with trout. They like salmon flies.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so it was, yeah, that was a blast to get into the trout and have kind of that technique reinforced in terms of, how to target them specifically. And I think too what the advantage of fishing the bombers, really big, fat, thick bombers, is I think it selects for bigger fish. Like you don't
Okay.
get as many small fish that want to attack such a big fly. And
Big
so,
fly, big fish.
yeah, exactly. And so, when I especially found in terms of kind of specific technique that the bomber was really, really good for fishing them top water when I wasn't necessarily seeing a hatch. because really we've only here in the sort of upper Miramichi, we've kind of only had really good hatches for like really like 2 weeks ago probably.
Okay.
So kind of mid-May when I knew the water was warming up and I knew the sea run trout were around, but they weren't really being super active on the surface, the bomber would be a really good way to get hits.
Cool.
Yeah, so kind of going beyond matching the hatch a little bit because there wasn't a hatch. The bomber seems to be a really good tool to use in that condition. Then once they started hatching, I kind of switched to matching the hatch a lot more. And then we had in our group chat on the New Brunswick fly fishing community, we had somebody ask about mousing for flies. Did you see that conversation at all? Probably not. You were probably busy.
Oh, probably not. No, I definitely didn't.
Okay. So people were asking about mousing and I was talking a bit about it because I personally love mousing for trout.
Hmm.
And I tied a bunch of mice this past
Moosing.
season with that in mind.
My
And
scissors.
I
See, where'd I put my scissors?
I just
Oh,
don't
they're right
know.
here. Oh, sorry, they're right here. We're good.
And so
They're
so
supposed to be
I
on
was
top of this.
yeah, exactly. So I was kind of curious myself because he had asked the question, I think about like we're talking about a week ago, so early June. Usually I don't really get into mousing until I don't usually try it until like I'm fishing them up in the upper sections of the river in July and August and all that. So, anyways, I thought, I'm kind of curious. We had this conversation about the mouse, and I busted out the mouse fly and absolutely slayed them and got some like I got a really nice sized trout as well. And like I
What
don't yeah,
what'd you use for your tail, like on your mouse?
I use a rabbit strip.
Ooh, okay, yep, gotcha.
So I use a nice, 3 or 4 inches of, the natural, undyed rabbit strip, or for my
Yep.
white mice, I'd use a white one. So the rabbit strip works really great. And then just a big old deer hair body trimmed down. I add eyes, but the eyes they always fall off. And then I like to add little wacky legs as well.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
That
Yep.
adds a really nice little bit of intrigue there. And so, and again, I posted this on the group, but for those that didn't see it, with the mousing, what you're doing is you're fishing it like you'd fish a popper for bass, whether we're talking smallmouth or striped bass. You're
Yep.
plopping it on the water, you're stripping quick, fast little jerks, and you're plopping that fly. You want to make as much noise and action as you possibly can. Basically, make your fly act like you're a big old mouse that's trying to run across the river and it's panicking. And
Ah, something's trying to eat me. Run!
yeah, exactly.
You're actually supposed to say that while you're fishing your mouse. It's supposed
Yeah, 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 yeah.
ah,
Help! Yeah,
it's part of the mouse
exactly.
technique, I'm pretty sure. I
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, just popping
run.
it and then sometimes, you'd pop it and then you want to let it sit, like do 3 or 4 quick strips, then let it sit for a second because sometimes they'll prefer to hit it after it's sitting for a second. Most of the time though, they want it pretty fast and frantic. And so yeah, I think that's a technique that's underutilized around here specifically. Like I know, elsewhere in the world and, out west and stuff like that, especially for brown trout, mousing is not like it's not crazy. A lot of people do that, but around here, I pretty much never see people using that technique. So
Not
it was
often, no.
it was cool that someone asked about it and then I tested it. So definitely closer to the evening is the ideal time to go after them. But I did it. It was literally 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It wasn't crazy overcast and it wasn't really sunny. It was kind of in between. It was sort of a
Topwater Freedom Day.
exactly. And it was amazing. So I think I've got to suggest more people fishing the Southwest, even the Northwest, fishing anywhere, any of those tributaries on the Miramichi and elsewhere. I'm sure if the mousing works here, it's going to work on the Kennebecasis as well, and other systems. So I think more people should try mousing, and you can even tie like the fly that I was using to catch these because I figured, okay, it's kind of early in the season to be mousing, so I'm gonna slim down that profile and fish like a much smaller mouse.
Well, would there
Um,
really be an
and I
early
did.
mousing season?
Well, there was. I mean, there
Why
was.
there's no mouse hatch, is there?
No, but you know what? Another thing that I noticed, the section of the river that I was fishing, uh, I noticed a dead frog at the bottom
Ooh,
of the pool, and
ooh.
that instantly told me in my mind, if there's frogs around here, then like those trout, they're not going to know the difference between a mouse and a frog that's frantically running along the top of the water. Or if they do know the difference, it's going to trigger them either way.
We're gonna
And
have to find a trout to ask them to find out.
yeah, exactly. So
Excuse me, sir, do you know the difference between a frog and a mouse?
I don't think they did because obviously there weren't, I mean, not that I ever see mice a lot when I'm on the river necessarily, but I saw the frog, so I knew right there that they were probably going to be taking top water. And another thing too, I want to talk about is sort of where in the river I've been successful for trout because again, I've had a really great spring trout season,
Hmm.
and I like to fish the main river. A lot of people like to chase trout in the tributaries and kind of
What's the
smaller
main
water.
river?
Sorry, the Southwest. Thank you. I like so I like to fish, bigger water is kind
Okay,
of what
yep,
I meant.
yep.
But 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 sort of bigger water, but for me what I found the sweet spot and in terms of how to sort of look at new water and try and figure out where the trout are. For me, and it's not just this year, it's all my years of fishing, but it's just kind of all coming together in my mind spots off of the southwest or the northwest where the big river is right there, but then there's a side channel or a bogan or a small little pond where the trout can still easily access the main river in question, the
Hmm.
southwest or the northwest, but they've got these sheltered pools and deep sort of pools, ponds, bogans, etc., to sort of be able to move around. And so, because when you're looking at the Southwest, or again the Northwest, or any of those, bigger, I say bigger rivers like that, it's sometimes hard to know where to even put your fly, because, as you know, the trout are not, especially as the season goes on, the trout are fairly concentrated in certain pools, and they like certain water much more than they like, others. So, yeah, you can do well just sort of generally fishing the water and just kind of trying to pick
Casting
up
about.
fish. Yeah, casting about. But what I'm realizing is if you concentrate your efforts on spots like that where the the main channel of the river is right there, but there's an entrance to a side channel, some smaller water. The Southwest especially is full of little islands that pop up in the middle of the river and sort
Hmm.
of finding and fishing around those, that's been where I've been having a great deal of success.
That's solid. Those are like any of my little trout spots that I fish or like areas that I would target trout
Uh-huh.
with clients, salmon fishing or anything like that. Same thing. It's always like the mouth of a little brook or something.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So, and that's good to know because, I want to be able to share sort of that general technique without telling people. go exactly here and cast exactly here to catch fish. But I think in a general sense, and I've found so many spots on Google Maps. Like that's an absolute key way. Or Open Street Maps, actually. If there's
Yep.
any people out there, Open Street Maps is better for one thing in particular, which is that you can
It's like a
search.
guide's worst nightmare, but a recreational fisherman's
Ah,
best friend.
that's right. Yeah, because
I
you can.
hope nobody ever steals my phone and gets my pictures. Oh
That's
man,
hilarious.
I'm
Yeah.
screwed.
Yeah, well, because with Open Street Maps, you can search by river, by
Yep.
brook, and when you,
Oh, did you see somebody? This is off
yeah,
topic. Did you
yeah,
see
go ahead.
somebody created in one of the Facebook groups? Somebody created Striper AI, pal.
Oh no.
It's so dangerous. Whoever did that, delete it. Because what it does is that somebody goes on to like NB Striped Bass Sports Fishing. It's called
Yeah,
Striper Pal. So they made a
yeah,
Striper AI,
yeah.
and it'll just somebody's like, "Where's the best fishing and where's the most fish biting?"
Okay.
Striper AI is the first one to make a comment, and it goes, "This many people have posted here. These are the conditions today," and it just gives a summarize of everything posted in the group. It's,
Wow.
I mean, it's great for new fishers, but like, man, that's if they want to burn out as the fishery grows. If you want to burn out spots, Striper AI is going to be the best friend for it. Like whoever created Striper
Yeah.
AI, I don't know. I seen that, just shook my head. Like, oh,
Okay, interesting. That's good to know. And that's
yeah.
funny
Sorry, off
because
topic, but yeah.
no, no, it's great. And I talk about AI a lot in my job.
Mhm.
And it's a real concern. So that's interesting. I didn't know about that.
AI
No.
has its AI has its place, right? And
Yep.
ultimately any technology can be abused. Ultimately, people are going to stop being creative if they use it too much. But the same thing is going to happen with fishing. People are going to stop trying. If they got an AI that tells them where to go, when to go, what lure to
Yeah.
use, like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well,
Everybody needs to learn, but in this
yeah.
fishery, like, come on, if
Yeah.
you need an AI to tell you where to catch a striped bass in the Miramichi River, just like I'm not rude, but go home. Pick
Yeah.
a different sport, pick a different river. Don't ruin it with a freaking AI. Whoever did that. I mean,
Yeah. I
I
get
hope
where
I
they're
hold
coming
my
from, but
hold my thought, but yeah, I'm sure I understand both sides. I'm sure it came from a great place, but yeah.
that's
Come on,
that's
whoever did it, delete Striper Pal.
yeah.
Come on, get rid of this stupid thing.
Now, at least
That's how I
they're
really
tell
feel.
at least it's a population of fish that can handle some pressure. If
I don't know.
as
I'm coming to a different opinion on that
Are
one.
you? I mean, more so than trout. Like if someone made that for trout and like gave
Why?
up specific trout holes. I mean, I
Yeah,
just
but
there's not enough trout to support that kind of technology or that kind of knowledge.
well, we got a lot of bass right now. But like
Yeah.
something I've kind of caught on to a lot of these
Yeah.
old timers talking about, I respect all the people that I've talked to and any of the old timers that have given me advice, but just something that I've noticed in conversation is that a lot of people talk about how great the salmon used to be and the generation before them was even better and so on and so forth. Well, here we are in probably one of the hardest climate changes or most drastic climate changes in modern human history,
Uh-huh.
really, in our records. But yet we have a river that is full of fish and thriving.
I
Yeah,
know.
they're not salmon, they're bass.
Yeah.
But salmon used to be that way back when the climate and the river dictated it, right?
That's it.
Now the climate and the river is dictating something a little different. So
100%.
why are we gonna abuse the crap out of the resource? Why are we, you know what I mean? And then I get it. I'm gonna get shot for this one. But like, let's just eliminate the word bass, salmon, trout. A fish is
Yeah.
a fish.
Yeah.
We got a river full of fish right now.
Exactly. Great point.
Yep. Yeah.
A river full of fish that are
Could
willing to
very be easily become a river not full of fish.
True, true. Yeah. No, no, no. And I mean, I think
I'm
like
gonna take the
they're,
early card on preaching it a little bit sooner than
yeah.
later.
Yeah, no,
But
that's
like I'm
good.
a stickler. Like
Yeah.
I was on a pilot program last year for keeping some bass above the head of
Right,
tide that
right,
were
right.
bigger. This year I don't know if they're doing the pilot program or not. Myself personally, I'm gonna start keeping more fish that are right under the line or a little bit smaller. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna I don't know, there's little steps that you can do just as a guide. I mean, not every person, like even myself, if I kept four fish every single day right now, today, I wouldn't be able to keep enough bass to do any damage to the population. But in 10 years from now, yeah, maybe I can. And if there's like
Right.
20 or 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 people that would be doing that every single day, it's gonna, yeah, everything will meet its every population will meet its max, right? And everything will
Yeah,
have its decline. We're gonna see it with the bass. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why we're silly in that sense. We let things just repeat itself over and over and over. So I'm just gonna
true,
take
true.
the high road right now. I follow the legal lines and the legal limits, and that's what I keep my fish at. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
You want to
especially,
promote a fishery, sorry, you want to promote
yeah,
a fishery where you can keep some fish. You know, catch and
exactly.
release isn't a pure, simple solution, but yeah, there's a fine balance.
There is. I mean, and for someone like me that, I'll probably during a season I'll probably go up for stripers, 3 or 4 times.
Mhm.
That can support 4 fish
Oh yeah.
a time very
And you want
easily.
it to, right? Like that's
Yeah.
in my mind, like, and might get picked on for this one again, but in my mind, just switching the Miramichi over to catch and release, it didn't help the salmon.
Hmm.
We switched to catch and release and our numbers got worse, right? Catch and
Right.
release is kind of like a simple solution, but it's quick. It needs to be backed up by something. It's not catch and release just won't build towards an environment, or it's not going to build towards a fishery with a surplus. And a
Yeah.
fishery with a surplus is a fishery with an extra amount of fish,
Right.
meaning we can go, okay, this amount of fish can be kept per year per season.
Right.
Um, so yeah, catch and release, it works, but it doesn't really work if they don't have a backup plan for it. If the numbers keep dwindling, you can't just keep catching and releasing them. It's just you're just going to be catching fewer and releasing fewer. There has to be like catch and release for 5 years based off of a strict stocking program or based off of improvement and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I feel you.
Then
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, then you go down that little rabbit hole of, well, should we even be on the river fishing for them, so on and so forth.
I know, it's
But
depressing.
well, it's not. It's kind of, you gotta really take a humbling look at the whole thing. And if
Yeah.
if the salmon closed on the Miramichi River, I'm not going to quit fishing because I like to
Yeah.
fish for trout. I like to fish for bass, right? I'm going to keep
Yeah.
fishing those rivers, and there's nothing DFO can do to keep us off the river to fish for trout. So
Right.
closing the fishery, it's not going to help.
Right.
At this time, there needs to be big intervention. There needs to be
Yeah.
help with predation. There needs to be help with habitat. And I'm still a little on the fence. We need to get some good biologists in here. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's a lot of new information coming out about hatcheries.
Right.
I'm not saying that I know everything here, but there's a lot of new science coming out about hatcheries, and there's a lot of rivers in the world where people are eliminating the hatcheries because the
Interesting.
hatcheries are affecting the genetics of the wild fish when they
For
need them
sure.
most, right?
Yeah.
So it's
That's the biggest issue with hatcheries is there is a effect on the genetics of the fish for sure.
yeah, there's a lot of places in the world that are getting rid of hatcheries and just promoting like streamside incubation, or like the Scotty beds or the Scotty boxes, or working
Oh yeah,
on.
I've seen that.
Yeah, like hatcheries, I don't know. I'm not sure yet. I got a lot of homework to do. I've been hearing a lot. There's been a lot of
Yeah.
new information coming out just in 2015.
Right.
Um, yeah, ASF is definitely on that bandwagon, and I'm not saying that I disagree it right now.
Okay, that's
Some
interesting.
cool info. Yeah, there's some really cool information about these hatcheries. One thing that I'll say that's the obvious
Yeah.
one, a smart ass might just say it and walk away. Um, the hatcheries have been here for this long, yet you can't get rid of a hatchery. Okay, cool. We still have the hatchery and we still don't have fish. So is the
Right.
hatchery actually helping or is the hatchery not helping? Like people got to sit down and look at both sides of the story. And there's more evidence coming out right now for the other side of the story where everything has always been pro hatchery.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that it is interesting, and I'd like to look closer to studies as to the efficacy of that technique. So that's interesting. Um, so that's cool talking about we covered the bass a little bit, the trout a little bit. One thing I wanted to mention too was kind of a gear review or a gear plug because I keep having this same experience where I'll go and fish with someone, and if I'm fishing with someone that's a little bit newer, I'll kind of, give them some tips and stuff for casting and whatever. And I like to always have new people or people that are fishing try my fishing rod because I have a setup that actually I copied off of, I think it was my buddy Ryan Drost. We were fishing the Upper St. John River for rainbows and bass, and I tried his rod for a couple casts. And I was blown away, and I was like, Ryan, what is this line? I have to buy it, and I did. And it's the Orvis Bank Shot sink tip line.
Hmm.
I've never fished with something like that. It absolutely shoots your line like a rocket. It's amazing for spring salmon and for even bass fishing because you can load that line and shoot it with one back cast. It's
Nice.
absolutely incredible. And so, like I said, like when I went down to the river for the spring salmon, my buddy Mac that I ran into, he as soon as he tried my rod and my well specifically my fly line, he was like, you have to text me the information so I can buy that. And then also when I went for bass, my buddy Darius tried it out and he was like, this is the best, like all I want to use is your rod basically. So big shout out to Orvis Bank Shot line. I
Bank
don't,
shot.
yeah, I don't see it available at any local shops, but you can order it through their website. I don't know who around here is a Orvis dealer, or if there are a lot of Orvis dealers in New Brunswick. But
Possibly.
yeah,
I don't know.
I'll edit it in there to the podcast, so I'll put a picture up there and a link if I can. So yeah, that Orvis bank shot line, like if you're finding you're having a bit of trouble in the spring casting those big flies and getting them deep, which can be tricky with with a floating line with a poly leader because those poly leaders they're great for getting the fly down low, but they're not really designed for really good casting. You kind of struggle with the casting a little bit with those poly leaders, at least any of the ones I've used. So yeah, that Orvis bank shot line, I think it's like $89 American plus tax. So Canadian, you're probably talking, 120, 130. So it's on the pricier side
What's
of
the
fly
like
line.
what's the taper on it? Like is it's sinking intermediate? What's the specs?
Yeah,
What
I
does
don't
it
know.
look?
I don't know exactly. It was like I bought that line like 5 years ago, and I don't know. I think it's IPS 6. I honestly can't remember. Whatever I say probably won't be correct, but
What's it called?
every
Orbis backcast?
bank shot.
Bank shot.
Orvis bank shot. And I think I got the 8 weight. So I fish a 7 8 weight. And then so, I bought sort of the line on the upper end of that. Again, I'm pretty sure it's been a few years, but I think if you got the 7 weight or the 8 weight version of that line, you'd be fine either way. But if you're listening and you find that it's a bit of a struggle for you to cast big flies with a sink tip setup, this line it's butter. You can just rocket that fly out there with it. Maybe, isn't going to give you the most gentle presentation, but when you're fishing for spring salmon in big deep water and bass, it doesn't matter that much. So yeah, that's a shout out. That's a gear review right there.
Nice. I was just looking
Something.
at that line. It's like
Hmm.
it's got the singing tip on it and then it
Yeah.
integrates into a running line.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah,
and
so
that's
it's
yeah,
kind of like the new some of the newer tech, but it's a shooting head with an integrated running
ex
line and the shooting head's a
exactly.
sinking tip on it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the
And
grain,
yeah.
it's pretty well, you've paired yourself up with like the number one, arguably the number one weight and the number one saltwater fly line in the world, probably.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people stick around that 400 grain. So an 8 weight is 270 grain. What's
Okay.
the 10 weight? 10 weight. Where is it? There's a chart here. I don't know. It says an Orvis 8 weight with 7S or 7 IPS is 270 grain.
Okay.
So it's fairly light, but I mean, that's an awesome line. I have it's
Yeah.
called the Airflow 40 plus,
Okay.
and it's got like 7 or 8 feet of sinking line, so it's the same kind of
Okay.
same kind of concept as that line as well. Same price point sort of deal.
Okay.
But yeah, very good line. The sinking tips, they are the cheap option for sure. Like $7, $8 to get in there and it'll get the job done. But like you said, to cast it, it becomes a nuisance.
Oh yeah.
Even when I find the swing on it isn't quite what I like.
Yeah.
Kind of this fly line, the floating line swings, but the sinking tip does this. It hinges.
Yeah.
It hinges and it
Yeah.
goes just like this. And like even when you fish the deeper water, it just, you know what I mean? It's not, it's just doing this. Like it's
Yeah.
almost dragging along shit. It doesn't have that nice, smooth, buttery
Yeah.
swing to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sinking tips. I mean, so yeah, those ones. I mean, as far as like my experience with the striped bass goes, that line is pretty well perfect for turning over big flies.
Oh
And then
yeah.
other than that, I mean, you pair yourself up with a floating line, so you can fish some topwater stuff and some
Right.
subsurface stuff. That's all you need
That's all you
is
need.
just a line like that with one of those integrated sinking or shooting heads. It's a shooting
Yeah.
head line, is what it is.
It exactly. It's a
So it's like
shooting head.
it's like a single hand line, but it's also like
Yep.
a switch rod line, is what it is.
Exactly.
It's kind of the new
Exactly.
tech. Sid at Trout Fly
Yeah.
Shop, he just brought in. I was just there the other day talking to him,
Yeah.
and Courtney Ogville actually called Courtney. He needed designs. Vision Snowbee. He has his own company, Nile
Okay.
Creek.
Yeah.
He brought in a bunch of the Nile Creek stuff, or he's bringing it
Okay.
in.
Yeah.
Nile Creek is Courtney stuff out of British Columbia, so it's a
Oh,
Canadian
cool.
company.
Okay, cool.
And that's Courtney's lineup. Courtney's the guy that kind of gave me some casting tips.
Nice.
And yeah, like it's a cheaper line, Nile Creek, and it's a full floating, integrated intermediate, integrating sinking tips. And then Vision has a new line out too, some kind of hybrid line.
Hmm.
But it's the same thing. A lot of these companies are getting into these integrated sinking lines, intermediates, and then instead of going to a floating line, they're using a short shooting head and then integrate it into a running line. And
Yeah.
I've seen the difference in the casting of my clients. I've never had so many clients casting big flies so nicely. Like we got
Yeah.
even myself, like I don't need to do the double hauls and the whippy backy forthy.
Exactly.
No offense to my saltwater homies.
Yeah.
I'm learning, but with
Yeah.
these lines, I can do my salmon cat the same technique that I would use with salmon fishing.
Yeah.
I'm able to turn over big flies. I'm able to do these nice
Exactly.
roll casts to reset my
Exactly.
line too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, it's nice. Fishing consistently, those new integrated shooting heads and running lines are sweet. And they're cheap.
Yeah.
They're cheaper than a floating line setup, right? Like they come in like
Right.
$89 and most
Right.
floating lines are going to cost you 120, 110.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, new tech. I like it.
It is nice, and again, a piece of advice to people that are just getting into fishing. Like I use the cheapest Orvis setup, the Orvis Encounter, and I can cast my fly pretty damn well. And it's not, it's I mean that rod is fine. It's the line. Your fly line that you're using is so important. Like modern rods now they're all pretty good, and you're gonna there's some difference. You might want something with a little more backbone to cast those bigger flies, but the biggest factor I find when you're first getting into fishing is the line. So like you don't need to buy $1,000 rod and reel to be able to cast well. Like start with the line, get a really good fly line, like that Orvis bank shot, or like for me for floating line, I like Cortland Peach 444 Peach.
Yep.
Get a
Heavyweight.
really good line. Yeah, get a really good line, and
I love that line though. That's a good line. What are you
yeah.
talking about? Killer
No,
line. Good
yeah.
line. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No, no, I'm saying that's my recommendation for
Oh,
the
okay.
yeah, for a floating line. That's my preference for floating line.
Yep.
So yeah, just a couple little bits of gear there. I think we're pretty much ready to wrap up. Anything else you wanted to mention? What are you looking forward to in the next couple weeks?
What am I looking forward to? Saltwater fishing.
You're getting into the salt a bit. The spring salmon are starting to come up the river. Sorry, the summer salmon are coming up the
Yep.
river.
The
People,
brights.
the
The
brights
catfish.
are The brights are here. So I'll probably be trying to get into some brights. I've never been big into summer salmon fishing, and last year I had a surgery like at the end of June. So right when the fishing was good for the for the brights. I was in the hospital recovering, so it wasn't a good season for me. So this year, no surgeries. I'm gonna try and get into those brights as much as I can, and it'll try my patience. I'm a trout fisherman. I like fishing where there's a lot of action, so it's going to be trying my patience a little bit.
Just
Uh,
remember, receiver,
yeah,
nobody starts fly fishing to catch more fish.
that's right. That's right. And I've been enjoying my time on the water so much that
That's
it
important.
it
Yeah.
it doesn't matter as much. So yeah, I guess so you're looking forward to the salt and probably trying to get into some of those fish. I'm
Yep.
looking forward to the bright salmon as well. And not only that, but right about now is the time of year where I'm going to be trying to make a trip or two to the upper St. John River to fish for rainbow trout, brook trout, and smallmouth bass.
Cool.
So that's a amazing fishery. Basically, without getting into too many details, between the two dams, the Mactaquac and the Beechwood Dam, there is a population of rainbow trout that spawn up the creeks and rivers that pour into the St. John River. And so, again, without giving too much up, if you look at Google Maps and you see a stream or creek pouring into the St. John River between those two dams, there's a chance that there is a population of rainbow trout and or trout that are going to hang around there. And
What about largemouth bass? There's largemouth bass up there?
there is,
Mm.
especially the lower part of the river, like more around Mackwick.
You have to keep
Um,
me in the loop for this one. If this is a weekend excursion, I might want to join you.
oh, okay. I'd love to have you. I'm looking at getting an Airbnb and being able to really spend a lot of time exploring
Just a,
all the different tribs.
just a warning, my fat ass is bringing a boat.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, where I fish, the water's really low. You wouldn't be able to run your boat in a lot of the spots, but a lot of it you
We can
would.
just poke, if you can just poke around, like it's,
Yeah,
once you know where you're
pull.
going.
Right, true.
Yeah,
Well,
trim the prop up, just poke around.
honestly, you'd be getting into some amazing fish that I probably wouldn't be able to get to with the boat.
I've
So,
gotta I've gotta explore a little bit. Like I
mm-hmm,
love guiding so much, and
mm-hmm.
it's not even so much that I'm passionate about the guiding, but at this point it's what puts the meat on my table,
Yeah,
so to speak. Um, I've got to figure out something. Like I've dedicated about 8 years of my life to fly fishing for the Atlantic salmon,
yeah,
and the saltwater fishery is there.
yeah,
But man, I love being in the woods. I love being on the river. That's
yeah.
where I feel the most comfortable. That's where I feel at home. I hate sand, man. Sand gets in fucking everything.
It
It gets in your
does.
ass. It gets in your knees. It's in the gear. I hate sand. Um, so I don't know. I gotta explore what's close to me. I mean, I've put time into this saltwater fishery back when I owned the paddle
Mm-hmm.
shack in
Mm-hmm.
Shediac, and that was 2018, and I was catching small schoolies in Shediac there. So I already
Yeah.
know, the fisheries there. There'll be big fish, and like same kind of strategies, but it's just cruising the coastline compared to jumping in a boat and cruising up the river. I'd rather be
Yeah.
in a boat on the river.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm the same minus the boat. I'm more of a shore fisherman. Maybe I'll become a boat guy as time goes on. I like to walk and wade and really, get my feet wet and to be honest, I just can't afford a boat right now. That's reason number one. Reason number one
That's true.
because
That's true. Boats are
because
expensive. They say
they're
a
yeah.
guy's happiest day of his life is the day he buys a boat and the day he sells the boat.
Yeah, exactly. And then another one I just heard was boat stands for break off another thousand. I like that one. That's a
Pretty
good one.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for the spring salmon fishing in my area, everyone's in a boat. There's like five of
Yep.
us, it feels like, that are trying to fish from shore. Obviously a lot more than that, but people, it's the season for boats. Those 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of April, that's boat season on the Miramichi for sure. And then also for you targeting the striped bass, on the northwest boats and even on the southwest around Quarryville. you
Jet
know,
boats.
having boats, you
Jet
can
boats.
cover, yeah,
Jet
exactly.
boat.
You can cover so much more water. You can, and with the bass too, obviously, you can visually see where they're active. So you can
Yep.
just cruise around the river until you find the spawning activity and then go nuts and attack them there. So that's
I
something I don't
actually,
have the advantage of.
believe it or not, I have my
Hmm.
best fishing. I catch my biggest fish away from the spawning activity. I
Oh,
won't,
interesting.
yeah, I won't talk about kind of where I go and how I
Yeah.
fish because those are my
Uh-huh.
clients, or not my
Yeah.
clients, but the lodge's clients.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, my best fishing is always pre-spawn.
Oh,
When that
interesting.
when that when that spawn picks up, I got to deal with
Yeah.
people all over the place. I got to deal with fish all over the place. I got to shore
Aha.
fishermen, boat fishermen, like that
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks leading up to it. Man, do I ever have a lot of fun.
Oh, cool.
And can we ever boat fish, man? When they're ramping up those first few warm days before that spawn, that's
Yeah.
some of the fun times. That's when you get them like multiple chases. And
Yeah.
now that this fishery develops and more folks are guiding for it and working on those programs, um, it's going to become a little bit like the salmon fishery was. It's not going to become necessarily,
Mm.
how many fish can you catch in a day? It's, did you get your keepers and, what was your biggest fish of the day? So I spent a
Yeah.
lot of time this spring just targeting and picking out the big fish.
Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of something I wanted to touch about on this
Yeah.
podcast, but the fish on the Miramichi compared to the fish on the St. John River, we have a newer fishery, I guess, or the growing population is newer than the growing population that would be on the St. John River. They get the 40 to 50 and the 60-inch fish in the St. John River.
Yeah.
Anybody who's claiming to catch a 45 or 46-inch bass on the Miramichi River is full of shit. Fact, okay? There's very,
Interesting.
very, very, very few of us that have joined the 40-inch club. I
Oh,
have seen
yeah.
so many fish in the 39 range. I have never
Interesting.
seen, and this is 8 years, and there's people
Yeah.
that have more time on the Miramichi than me. I have never seen a fish bigger than 40 inches. I have not seen 41,
Interesting.
not seen 42, 43, 44. Now, it depicts the class and the population
Hmm.
of the river, right? Now,
Hmm.
as those fish, it might be maxed out, might not be,
Hmm.
because it depends on what the fish are eating to depict their size. So,
Right.
one new thing that I'm noticing, last year we had a really big run of Gaspereau.
Mm-hmm.
Really big run of Gaspereau. The smelt run's small, but the Gaspereau run seemed to be pretty
Okay.
good. And last year with the Gaspereau, we started seeing shad. And
Yeah.
this year, I'm seeing shad again.
Yeah.
Shad are just like another river herring, right? But they're twice,
Exactly.
most of them are twice the size,
Exactly.
right? And what does the
At
St. John
least.
River, what does the St. John River have that the Miramichi didn't really have?
Hmm.
Huge shad run.
And yeah, I was gonna say Shad, Gaspro run as well.
I'm looking, man. I have been out.
Hmm.
And so, like, what I try to do with my clients, if you're coming fishing with me, I try my absolute hardest to get you a fish that is either 36, 37, 38, or if we can get lucky, a 39-inch fish.
Hmm.
Those caliber fish, they seem to fight harder.
Oh
The
my
the
God.
the initial pull they do is
Oh
it's
yeah.
very explosive, but then
Yeah.
a lot of people are losing those fish.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
So I'm becoming more of an experienced guide with this fishery.
Yeah.
I'm experienced guide before the fishery, but with
Yeah.
this fishery specific, I'm getting a lot more experienced, and I'm getting to the point where I would rather clients not show up with a rod and not show up with flies.
Hmm.
I've seen too many of these big 36, 37, 38, and
Oh,
39
I
inch
see what you're
fish
saying.
lost. It's driving me nuts. And people will give me a smack on their wrist for this one, but when it
Yeah.
comes to a client who's gonna be after a trophy, anything in the striped bass community, if it's not 40 inches and big, it's not considered a trophy fish.
Hmm.
That's the information from the saltwater
Hmm.
fishery down in Chesapeake Bay and Rhode Island and California. So we got to get into those 40 inches to be into the size caliber class to call trophy
Hmm.
fish. But I've seen hooks straightened and too many leaders broken. So I'd love people to be using 30-pound leader and
Yeah.
a deep, wide gap hook. I cannot
Yeah.
get over that one enough. You will lose less fish with a deep gap hook. You can all day long, you can use streamer fly hooks. You can use different things, but unless you're using a hook that can fit your thumb
Yeah.
in there, like where's
Yeah.
my 5-aught, guys? But anyways, here's a 5-aughter here, right?
Yeah.
If you want to catch big bass
Hmm.
and you don't want to lose them, you don't want your hook to straighten out. If you want to catch the 36, the 37s, and the 38s,
Yeah.
you need to set your tackle up accordingly, and that's what I did this year. And I don't know. I only had one client in the
Hmm.
entire month of May that I did not get them a 36-inch fish.
That's really cool. And
It's
honestly,
fun.
I can personally attest and kind of bring more context to what you're saying. So what we were fishing together post spawn, if you remember, I lost the biggest fish of the day. It snapped my fly right off. Now I could tell by the fight
On
of that
contact too.
fish, right? And the fight of that, like that was a fish that was probably mid 30s. It was probably a 30 somewhere in that range. So
I didn't see the take, but I would be confident based off your experience that fish, even if you look at the weight scale, these
yeah,
fish jump up from the 32 to 34. They
yeah.
jump up like 8 pounds from a 34 to a 36-inch fish. So that's why I say
Yeah,
those that caliber, the 36, 7s, 38s, and some of the 39s, they'll snap flies on contact. They'll snap 20 and 25
yeah.
pound leader just
Well,
like that, and they'll straighten out a hook.
so again, last year I was using 10 or 15 pound leader, and that's why I lost that fish. This year I switched to a big, thick 25 pound.
Mhm.
I didn't go any bigger than 25 because my
Most people don't. Most people
yeah.
don't.
Well, my nail
Like the
knot,
saltwater community doesn't usually go past
no.
25, and that's good enough to land the 40 inchers and
Exactly.
stuff.
And like the most of the reason why was because my nail knot on my line was 30-pound test. So I
Hmm.
wanted that to be thicker and graduate down a bit to my leader size, right?
Yep.
So in any case though, that 25-pound leader, the difference that made for my ability to horse those fish in, fight them hard, and have full confidence that they're not going to snap my fly off, that's a
Keep
real
them at the
game
top of the
changer.
water column is the biggest thing.
Right.
If you can keep
And
a big fish up top, you limit the
hmm.
fight. If that big
Yeah,
fish is going down, and if you've got
right.
light gear, it's just so hard
Yeah,
to do it. I mean, if you've got the right gear, the heavy leader, you can haul right back up, and you
yeah.
can actually fight the fish as the fish basically just swimming along in the bottom.
And almost no one I was fishing with was using leader that thick. Almost everyone else was using 10 or 15, which was
And
fine when you're getting
you can do it.
schoolies, but
Yeah,
yeah.
and and honestly, I've done it myself. You can land some
Hmm.
of those big
For sure
fish
you can.
on smaller leader, but as
Right.
a guide who consistently sees either new fly fishers or people that just get excited when they're like, "Holy shit, this thing's doing like they're
Yeah.
hooking to a demon and they got this
Yeah.
death grip on it, right?"
Yeah.
I just go right it off like, "Look, 30-pound leader,
Yeah.
5/0, 4X saltwater
Hmm.
hook. You will
Yeah.
land big fish with me all day long."
Yeah. Yeah, and same
A
with
lot of
I'm
people hook these big fish. A lot of
yeah,
people hook these
yeah.
fish that are 37s, 38, and
Right.
they're tanks.
Yeah.
Those fish are pushing the 20-inch class, right? They're
Yeah.
coming in at a minimum size of about 16 pounds and maybe a max size of 24 if you're into a 38 or a 39, right? So those are big fish. And I mean,
Big
we
fish.
might get picked on a little bit from the saltwater community on, those 39 inchers aren't a trophy fish. But on our river right now, at the top of the size range, you're not going to find any bigger. That's the trophy bass
Yeah.
right now for the Miramichi until we start to see a couple people catch the 44s, the
Hmm.
48s. We need to break 40. We need to be mid 40s. Then we need to start breaking the 50s.
Hmm.
Then we've got our trophy striped bass fishery on the
Yeah.
Miramichi. But
Yeah.
is it gonna get there? I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know. I'm
all
learning
I
a lot about
know,
the saltwater community.
yeah,
So
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, all I know is they're huge fish. They fight well. They taste great. Basically, everything you'd want in a fish is
pretty well.
striped bass have.
Yep.
So, yeah, well, so that's good to know. And again, the gear talk is good because hopefully, if we can save a couple people from losing the big fish of the day just
Mhm.
by listening to us in terms of leader size and 5/0 hooks,
You
same
could go
thing.
out, you'll
Yeah.
experience it. It's not even so much the 5/0 hooks, that's the size I like, but it's that deep hook gap and the
Mhm.
4X strong.
Yeah. Yeah,
They're not leader shy, they're not hook shy, so don't be shy on your
no,
second gear.
exactly. And like last year I tied my bass flies on a 3/0 like Carlisle style hook. And then this
Mm,
year they had the 5/0 hooks in the proper bass 5/0s and they were amazing. They're so thick and strong. You're not going to get a bent hook off of those 5/0.
exactly.
Like you're
Yep.
just not. It's not going to happen.
My preachings have started to reach.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm not being
Yeah.
cocky, I prourse.
No, no, it's great. It's great.
But no,
It's helped me this season and hopefully it can help help other people too. So,
no, That's what it's all about. No, and that's like the seminars that I've been teaching at the fly shows, and I'm really hoping this year that I can do some traveling with the fly shows. I'd like to
Yeah.
go down to the States and go to some other places in Canada. It's the same stuff. I have the same presentations, the same slideshows,
Yeah.
same stuff. 30-pound leader, 5/0 wide gap
Yeah.
hooks.
Yeah.
And the only difference is this year is I'm changing what my flies look like a lot more. I'm dialing
Okay.
that in. So
Yeah.
that's the secret to my trade. You'll have to wait for
Uh-huh.
the 2026 Bushwhacker fly catalog
There we go.
before people get to see my patterns. But
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's one of those things you can play with a lot of stuff, a lot of different colors for the bass. But
Yeah.
there are patterns that work better than others. That
Okay.
much
Good
I
to
can
know.
tell you. I can tell you, sir.
Well, that'll be something we'll lightly touch on next podcast without giving away too many trade secrets because I have some
Yeah.
questions there, but we've gone plenty long enough, so I
Oh yeah,
think
we got lots of content for you to edit.
we got lots going on
I'm
today.
making up for last time. I'm making up for last
Yeah,
time. Go
no,
ahead, man.
it's good that we got a nice longer podcast. We did have a lot to talk about
Yep.
this time. So thanks for connecting with me
Oh,
and we'll see you soon. Yeah.
I have a cool story.
Okay, yeah.
Can I share my story?
Please. Please.
Okay, so I have I can get a testimonial for this if I need it.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
everybody, don't call me crazy, but I can talk to
okay.
fish
Oh, okay.
and I can prove it.
All right.
So I fish topwater plugs. It's just a little white plug. I don't
Uh-huh.
have any with me. It's a little white plug from
Yeah.
Michaels, and I'll
Yeah.
fish like little bucktail. The plug's on top. I have a whole bunch of white ones in my fly box, and I give flies to clients all the time. So I was fishing with my client, Josh and Sarah. Josh was waiting, and Sarah was in the boat with me. And I was like, "Do you want to fish topwater?" She's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely." I'm like, "Okay." I have a fly here, so I always keep a marker in my life jacket. So I pulled the marker out and I was tying the fly. I'm like, "It's just white." She's like, "Cool." I'm like, "What should I write on it?" She's like, "Really?" And I'm like,
Oh
"Yeah, what
my
should you write?"
God.
So I write.
Hilarious.
She goes, "Write, bite me." I said, "Okay." So on the
Oh
one
my
side,
God.
I wrote, "Bite me." Okay. Wrote it on, tossed the fly out, and she was getting action. I have video of it. And the
Yeah.
fish were hitting at it and swiping at it. So, anyways,
Yeah.
she's fishing away, and I'm waiting for one to inhale it. And she kind of just really gracefully looks at me and says, "Alex, we wrote the wrong thing on it." What do you mean? Well,
Oh my.
we wrote bite me, and they're just biting at it. We got to write eat me on it so they'll eat it.
Right.
I'm
Right.
like, all right, sold. Reel it in. So she reels it in. I write eat me on the side of it. Put an exclamation point. She casts it out. First cast, boom, fish inhales it, reels it in. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but I mean, I think I can talk to fish. And I have a
Uh,
testimonial to prove it. I gave her the
yeah.
flies, the only thing. I gave it to her because they
Yeah.
go like striped bass fishing with a bunch of different guides and
Yeah.
charters. They're from California. And so,
That's
Sarah,
too
if you're
funny.
listening, you got to put a testimonial in, maybe put a picture of the fly. I forgot to take out. You got to comment on the video if you hear it, Josh and
Yeah.
Sarah, for the proof because apparently I can talk to fish. That's my cool
Oh
story from the
man.
river this spring.
I like that. I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, you asked me a cool story. I was like, I can't not forget that one.
That's the one. That's the story. I love that. And whether it's, you're talking to the fish or it's a confidence fly, I think having a confidence fly is a big thing. But
Damn it, he's on to me. He's on to me. He's on to
well,
me. I
I
did it first,
choose,
okay? It's the
yeah,
ultimate guide trick this year.
I
I gotta
choose to
get.
accept it.
Yeah, we'll put this offering out to the other guides. That's my
Yeah,
guide trick for the
that's
season.
your that's
I
your
won't
trick.
try
Love
for
it.
others. That was mine. You know, if we're gonna do a contest of the guess
Okay.
the best guide trick of the year, we
Okay.
develop something as this goes. I don't know, but
Okay.
that's mine. That's my contribution. That's my guide trick. I can
Oh,
talk to
that's
fish by
too
writing
funny.
messages to them. Bite
That's
me,
too funny.
Alex. We wrote the wrong thing. It needs to say eat me. And wow,
I love that. It's true.
it's
It's true, right? You
yeah,
get lots of
it's
bites.
like
You want the eats.
yeah, it's too funny. It's like something my wife would say fishing. You know, I'm the big
Yeah.
expert. Okay, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna cast out. She's like, well, you should have just wrote eat me because they're only biting it. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. It would sell it's one of those things.
Oh man, that's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Well, hell yeah. Thanks for popping in and we'll try and do this in more like a month time frame for the next one because
Yep.
hopefully you'll be less busy.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, thanks
Another
for
2 weeks
everything
of
else.
chaos. And I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
exactly. All right, well, we'll be chatting.
cool, buddy. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, man.
No problem. You have a good day, man.
You too.